All right, good morning. This is Chris Mark with a sniper's perspective on a kind of cloudy February 21st, 2024. Want to get a quick podcast out. I got a communication the other day that triggered this article I had written in 2012 and had been updated, through 2015, 16 about stolen valor. So, what is stolen valor? Well, stolen valor is when somebody goes out and claims to have been a military veteran, a combat veteran, or claims awards they did not earn. And it troubles a lot of people. I think any person that has served in the military in any capacity is troubled when they hear people lying about, or fabricating military experience. And it's not just civilians that do it. Unfortunately, we get a lot of folks in the military that are not satisfied with what their job was, and they decide that they have to have done something more. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here. So stolen valor, has been around as long as people have been around. I'm sure that there were times in the Roman legions where you had folks in Rome going, I'm a legionnaire trying to pick up some, good-looking, Roman person at the local pub or the local bar. I'm sure Genghis Khan's armies had them. I suspect it's been around forever. As a matter of fact, the Life of Walter Mitty, I think the name of the movie. I'd never heard Walter Mitty. But I ran across a guy that was a 2-2 SAS gentleman, and I had been working with the guy that I found out later had been fabricating his background. And to give credit, this 2-2 SAS operator picked up on it first, and he kept using the expression Walter Mitty. I didn't know what that was. I looked it up. It's an old British story about a guy that lives in his own mind and fabricates stories. And apparently that's not uncommon to call stolen valor people in the UK Walter Mitty. So we're going to talk about it a little bit because this has implications to the First Amendment, and some people may disagree with my opinion here, but that's okay. So without further ado, let's get started very quickly and talk about stolen valor, because I think it is an interesting topic. So let's so what is the Stolen Valor Act? So in 2005, President Bush submitted, and it was passed by Congress, called the Stolen Valor Act, that made it a crime, an absolute crime, simply to pretend to have been in the military or that you had gotten awards you did not deserve. In 2010, there was a lawsuit. It's called a case called U.S. v. Alvarez, where the Supreme Court shot it down 6-3 and said, simply lying about being in the military is not a crime. It can't be a crime. And, I have to agree with that because I am a big, privacy advocate, First Amendment advocate, Second Amendment advocate. I love our Constitution. And so, you get some knucklehead walking around claiming to have been a sniper, Navy SEAL, Army cook. It doesn't matter. You can do that. Now, it becomes a bigger problem when you're doing that with kind of nefarious, kind of outcomes in mind. So in 2013, the Stolen Valor Act was updated and passed by the 113th Congress. The law amends the federal criminal code to make it a crime for a person to fraudulently claim having received valor awards specified in the act with the intention of obtaining money, property, or other tangible benefits by convincing another that he or she received the award. Now, some of these awards, as simple as a combat action ribbon, which I do have, Purple Heart, Silver Star, Medal of Honor, you can kind of guess. Now, if you're going to go out and say, hey, I'm a disabled veteran, I got a Purple Heart, and you're soliciting money, that absolutely is a federal crime. We're going to talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about some of these folks. I'm married fairly recently, been with my wife now about 2 years, but it's interesting. I was explaining to her stolen valor, and she was absolutely apoplectic. She's like, you got to be kidding me. People actually do this. They lie about it. And so we started talking about examples. She saw some in her real life, and she was blown away. Probably one of the funniest examples of stolen valor I experienced. So I'd been previously married, and the woman I was married to, still good friends, wonderful woman. Her dad was retired Navy. Certainly she met me. I was a young recon Marine. We got married, but I got selected to be a SEAL officer. I did not graduate BUDS. I got banged up. I had a lot of miles on my body, so I'm not claiming to be a SEAL. I went to BUDS. While I was in BUDS, my now ex-wife went out to a club with one of her girlfriends. And of course, here he comes. Some guy walks up to her trying to pick up on my now ex-wife and said, I'm a SEAL. And she said, oh, that's really interesting. What BUDS class were you? And of course, he couldn't remember. And she goes, my husband is BUDS right now. Why don't we give him a call? And so the guy, tried to back away very quickly. She couldn't get a hold of me, but she did get a hold of one of my friends who very quickly dressed the young man down. He was a he was a National Guardsman, which nothing wrong with that. You serve your country, you serve your country. But it actually happened to me. And it was pretty amusing. Gosh, it happens all over. Here's just some knucklehead at the top wearing an Army uniform. I didn't serve in the Army. I've spent quite a bit of time at Fort Benning, with the Army, going through training and just, working with them, things like that. I know enough about Army uniforms to tell you this guy's full of shit right off the bat. Marines don't wear berets, but here's what I do know about the Army. Look at the Rangers, look at, airborne, the paratroopers, folks like that, Green Berets, man, they take time, they style those berets. They look good. They wear them. They look good. This knucklehead doesn't even know how to wear it. He's got the, special forces flash on his beret wrong. I don't even know where to start with his, awards there. I mean, it's a complete soup sandwich. Long and the short, we see this all the time. It is frustrating. What's more frustrating, look at the gentleman below him. You might recognize that face. That is Senator Dick Blumenthal. Dick Blumenthal, senator. He actually claimed to, been a Vietnam vet and so on and so forth and everything else. He had to retract those claims. He completely lied about it. In fact, Dick Blumenthal, not only did he not serve in Vietnam, he got 5 deferments from the draft. Yet when it was politically expedient and convenient, he said, no, I was a Vietnam vet. So it's not just guys picking up chicks in bars or vice versa or whatever. It's politicians, and it is exceedingly frustrating. Boy, this is a case that really kind of shocks the conscience. So there was a gentleman, you can read all about him. His name was Randy Abbott. He had a surf school for disabled people, right? And so he was helping them surf, and he's apparently disabled. He I don't know what happened, but paralyzed from the back down or something. But he was teaching people how to surf in San Diego, which is great. He claims he'd gotten a surfboard stolen, and in the ensuing, news media and everything, it was like he was a Marine Corps Scout sniper and everything else. And so I had some folks approach me and say, "Hey, is this guy legitimate?" Start doing some investigation. Turns out he was not. But man, you want to talk about commitment? On the right-hand side, that's a tattoo that he had on his website, completely covering the left-hand side of his rib cage. If you don't recognize what that is, you can see on my t-shirt right here, it's called the Shadow Man. Okay, it's called the Shadow Man. That is a very specific piece of imagery from specifically the 1st Marine Division Scout Sniper School on the West Coast. And you see at the bottom where it says suffer patiently, patiently suffer. Again, Marine Corps motto. This guy was so committed that he actually got a tattoo on there. And he did when he got called out, he did apologize. He sent an apology to me on my blog publicly, as well as other people. Mr. Mark, I personally want to apologize to you for being dishonest and lying about what I did in the military. I apologize for dishonoring you and all other recon Marines and snipers, so on and so forth. So he got called out, did apologize, but man, you want to talk about commitment. I mean, that's commitment right there. Putting the, getting a full tattoo to convince people that you were a sniper. Here's some other ones. Boy, the gentleman at the top left, I don't know what his story is, but if you're going to steal valor, make sure you steal all of it. I mean, go all the way. This guy claims to, boy, look at that rack he's got. I think he literally went and bought every single award you can buy and just stacked them up there. He's got a French Forget there. So apparently at the time this picture was taken, he was in 5th or 6th Marines. Look at that. EOD badge. I mean, SEAL Trident. He's wearing them completely wrong, of course, and he's wearing everything wrong. But hey, it looks like SEAL. I would say MEAL. He was in MEAL Team 6 if you look at him. But this guy, again, if you're going to steal valor, steal it. One of the more interesting things I see is when we talk about stolen valor. Nobody comes out and says, "Hey, I served in the Marine Corps. I was a cook." And there's nothing wrong with being a cook in the military, doing any service. You should be proud. If you have served your country in any capacity, be proud of it. Be proud of it. It's really fascinating to me. If you look up until Vietnam, the percentage of support to frontline personnel, right? If you think about infantry, the grunts, special forces, SEALs, whatever, the guys and women on the ground doing the frontline fighting, the support to frontline fighting, it was about an 8-to-1 ratio. So for every person out there, slinging lead, you had 8 people behind them providing all the support. When we say support, I mean beans, bullets, bandages. Hey, you've got to have supply. You've got to get fed. You've got to get paid. You got to go on leave. You've got to have, people making sure your weapons are repaired. I mean, all this stuff. So it was an 8-to-1. By the time we got to Iraq and Afghanistan, I believe that ratio had increased to about 14-to-1. So for every frontline troop out there, you had 14 people supporting them. Again, hey, there's an old joke, right? Bullets don't fly without supply. We as snipers and stuff used to make fun of that. But at the end of the day, very true statement. If you don't have supply, guess what? You don't have ammo. If you don't have armors, guess what? Your weapons break down. You don't have mechanics. Guess what? All that heavy machinery breaks down. So people should just be proud of what they did. However, there seems to be, if somebody's going to pretend to be, something they're not, man, they go all the way. On the very bottom here, is actually McDonald. He was his last name was McDonald. He was Robert McDonald. He was the eighth Veteran Affairs Secretary, if you can believe that, 2015. Yes, stolen valor. He lied about his background, said he was special forces in Korea. Complete BS. Certainly never was. Yes, he had served in the Army. Great. And he was airborne qualified. Awesome. Not special forces. He got called out, obviously lost his job. On the top right here, this is one of the sadder stories. And I say that because this is, an active duty Marine. By all accounts, had a pretty damn good career. I mean, he got promoted to be a sergeant major, which is the highest enlisted rank you can get in the Marine Corps. So what had happened was I had some sniper brothers that reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking at his bio. He had just gotten a new position and it doesn't add up. Can you take a look? And I said, yeah, of course. Well, the thing that really stuck out to me was he was wearing 3 combat action ribbons. So a combat action ribbon in the Marine Corps and the Navy it's a by name award. You get it for being in direct combat, but you have to be in a combat zone. So for example, if you serve in Iraq and you're in combat, you may be authorized to wear a combat action ribbon. If you go to Afghanistan, you may get another one. If you go back to Iraq, you don't get a third one for going back to Iraq. So for each combat zone, you'll only get one. In today's world with, global war on terror and all that, it's not uncommon to see a lot of Marines with 2 of them for being in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's fairly common, quite frankly. But when you start seeing people with 3, now I'm an old timer. I got a combat action ribbon in Somalia back in 1994 for being a sniper back there. But unless you served in a couple of places that are very, very unique, Somalia, Panama, which I don't believe any Marines served in, but certainly there are a bunch of SEALs that were over there. Grenada back in 1983, Haiti, potentially in the Army Bosnia or something like that, or the SEALs in Bosnia. Having a combat action ribbon prior to 9/11 was pretty darn rare. So when you see somebody rocking 3 of them that's younger than me, kind of raises some red flags. So we did some investigation. I wrote a blog article. It got turned over to the Marine Corps. They did their own investigation, relieved him of duty. He had claimed, 3rd combat action ribbon. I think most disturbingly, what he had claimed was that he was a legitimate sniper. Make no mistake. Went through sniper school, legitimate sniper. He had claimed that he was honor graduate from sniper school. Well, the challenge with that was the actual honor graduate people in his class had contacted me and said, look, this guy was the honor graduate sniper partner. The honor graduate, after doing a combat tour, apparently had come back and taken his own life. So here's a guy that not only is going to say, well, I was the honor graduate, but he's actually taking that award from his actual sniper partner in sniper school and ascribing it to himself. And one of the things that struck me about this, and you'll see it over and over, when people get confronted with stolen valor, it's rare that they come clean and go, oh, you got me. More often than not, man, they come out guns a-blazing, insult you, call you names. They just dig their heels in, more and more strongly. And that's tough. Now, lest you think stolen valor is limited to men, here's a couple of good examples. And again, here's it looks like a young woman up on the top right, again, part of MEAL Team 6. She's wearing a trident, claiming to be a SEAL. What's interesting is I just at a close glance, her ribbon seemed to be in appropriate order. Now she's got a combat action ribbon with a gold star. Certainly, I don't believe these are her ribbons, but they look like they're in the right order, quite frankly. She's got the expert badges that are given if you're in the Navy. She's got combat action ribbon. It looks like she's got a sea service ribbon. So the medals actually look like they're in the right order. Clearly, we're in the trident. Is a dead giveaway, at least in this time now. Are women going through and passing special operations and more tough training? Absolutely, they are. They've got a sergeant now in the Marine Corps. Her name is Barth, I believe, last name Barth. And she was the first female to graduate from basic reconnaissance course and become a qualified reconnaissance Marine. And she's now actually a sniper for them. So, it's a different world today. And hey, I got to give credit. There were some folks that were kind of denigrating her a little bit. And some of the instructors from BRC, I'm in some secret Facebook groups with them. And they came out to her defense, said, man, she absolutely rocked it. So before you say anything, you need to understand this Marine, she killed it. So, but this picture obviously dead giveaway. And then on the bottom, you've got some woman that claimed to, obviously be an Army soldier and had all kinds of awards, stuff like that. Now, First Amendment, I said some people will disagree with this position. At the end of the day, I do believe in freedom of expression. If you want to walk around and say you got a Medal of Honor, shame on you. I think it's ethically and morally atrocious. But I support your right to do that so long as you're not doing it with the objective of trying to rip somebody off. And that's where it really crosses the line when people start saying, hey, I did this, give me money, or feel sorry for me, or donate to a cause, or whatever the case is. But if you want to do it, I absolutely believe with that. I don't have to agree with your position. I can find it absolutely offensive, but I believe strongly enough in our Constitution and the First Amendment right to expression that I will support that. I mean, the very fact that I'm doing a blogcast right here and I don't have, the police knocking on my door, is evidence of how great our country is in allowing, First Amendment rights. People can say offensive things. That's okay. 99% of the time. What you can't do, obviously, is scream fire in a movie theater or do something that's going to hurt somebody else. But, if you want to get up and say, hey, I was a Navy SEAL, whatever. I have no doubt, and it's not exclusive just to the military. I have no doubt there are people going out to bars, nightclubs, whatever, and lying about being, of course, the CIA, FBI, college football players, pro football players. I mean, we tend to get a little more sensitive in the military for a variety of reasons, but should it be legal? As long as they're not trying to profit off of it, yeah, I think it's disgusting, but I do support it, quite frankly. First Amendment rights. Now, here's where, as we talk about, when you try to profit off of it, it does become a crime. Here's a woman that I'm trying to remember her name. Hold on just a second. I'll see if I can pick it up. Hold on. Sorry, I'm typing fast. I know. I'm trying to remember her name. So, because since she did this, I think it's only appropriate. Sarah Jane Kavanaugh. So her name is Sarah Jane Kavanaugh. She was a social worker at the VA. Had never served, but she was a social worker at the VA. She claimed she was a former Marine, that Purple Heart recipient, combat recipient, and had cancer. And she ended up bilking the VA out of over $250,000 in VA benefits. And by the way, she had people donating to her, Sarah Jane Kavanaugh. So she got 6 years in prison for doing that. She didn't get 6 years in prison for lying about her military background. She got 6 years in prison for lying about it in an attempt to rip off people and rip off the VA. And she did it pretty effectively. She got away with it for years, but she did finally get caught. So 6 years in prison. Now, there are these folks. We're going to talk here at the end about how you can identify them pretty quickly, pick them up. Some people are very good. I got to be honest. I've run across people. I ran across a former Marine I had served with. Man, this guy was so good. And I found out later after the investigation, he had lied about a ton of his military stuff in that space that I hadn't seen him for 10 years. But he was so good at it. He could look you in the eye. And if you said, hey, it's a nice, beautiful day out, blue skies, he would say, well, the skies are green. And by the end of that discussion, you'd be questioning whether or not those skies were green. It's shocking to me. Some people have that ability to lie with so convincingly, with such compunction, that they can convince you of that. But most of them have some tells. But there are some companies, this is so anathemic to who we are and the way we think about the military in our country that most folks don't put up with it. I'll just give you a great example. Schneider Trucking. So gosh, probably about 3 years ago, I got a call. There was a guy that had won what Schneider does. They call it the Ride of Pride. So Schneider Trucking is huge in supporting veterans. They have a veteran apprenticeship program. So if you're a veteran, you want to learn to drive a truck, Schneider will put you in an apprenticeship program. They'll teach you. And then every year what they do is they take veterans and you can apply for it. And, it's a pretty, selective process. I think the drivers have to vote on it, but they give you a truck. And if you go to their website, you can see these. They paint these trucks, these rigs every year, and they let that veteran captain, I guess they call it being captain, that rig, and they will let them, ride in parades and do all kinds of stuff. And I mean, these trucks, I mean, this is not an inexpensive paint job. This is a pretty damn big pride. So I got a call a few years ago, and there was a guy, of course, he's like, yes, I'm proud to have gotten the Ride of Pride truck. I'm of course, Force Recon Marine, Scout Sniper, BS, more BS. So came across my desk. People said, hey, is this legit? We looked into them. Absolutely fabricated everything. So I politely reached out to Schneider and just said, hey, you might want to take a look. To give full credit, they did apparently their own investigation internally, put out a statement and said, look, we don't tolerate that. I don't know what happened to the gentleman. I don't know if he's still working there. Somebody said they looked him up on LinkedIn and he was gone from that company pretty quickly. But got to give, shout out to Schneider. I mean, these guys really took it seriously and in my opinion, did the right thing. So that's pretty awesome. So how do you tell if somebody's stolen valor? Well, first of all, most people that are in the military and have done stuff, whatever, we may talk about it, but we'll typically talk about it kind of self-effacingly, right? You won't hear me talk a lot about combat or anything like that. What you will hear me talk about, and a lot of my friends, are ridiculous things that young Marines get into, and young soldiers and sailors, and name it, and some of the lighthearted moments you go through. So when you see somebody that's immediately coming out of the gate with, hey, let me tell you, there I was, right? There I was. There used to be a site called This Ain't Hell, and it was run by a guy named John Lilia, who's a former Army veteran. He's since passed. He passed a couple of years ago, but he used to track down stolen valor cases. And I believe the website now is called Guardians of Valor. You can find them, but his name was John Lilia. They still track down stolen valor cases, but he kind of helped me get into stolen valor investigations. But it's interesting. Guys will come out of the gate, and women, and it's immediate that, they got to tell you about all their great stories and amazing things. And, they're just right there in your face with it. So anybody that's that, kind of quick to say, hey, here's what I did, I kind of look at them, with a grain of salt. As a matter of fact, my podcast is called A Sniper's Perspective. I've written a lot of stuff like that. But when I meet somebody that doesn't know me and they say, what do you do in the military? Quite frankly, I just say I was combat arms. And part of the reason for that is I'm so used to people lying about being a sniper, everything else. I just don't even want to get the, oh, sure you were. You say, here's, of course you were a sniper. I think it was Don Shipley who, and I'll pull up his website here in a minute, who said that there were, 400 SEALs in Vietnam and he's met all 7,000 of them. I believe it might've been him. If not, somebody made that statement. At any given time in the Marine Corps, there are only about 350 snipers, but God, I've probably met 10,000 of them in my lifetime. Here's a really amusing story. I met a woman one day, and she was, I'm trying to remember, but I had met her when I was still in the Marine Corps, and I was a sniper at 3.6. And she was talking about her boyfriend, and I was like, cool, what does he do? And she goes, well, he's a sniper. I said, right on. Well, I'm a sniper. What's his name? I may know him, right? Pretty small community. And she goes, well, here's the thing. When they're in the rear, he's a cook. But when they go out in the field or go to combat, he's a sniper. And I'm like, yeah, that's not quite how this works in any way, shape, or form. And I will tell you, I think aside from SEALs, probably lying about being a sniper is probably way, way up there. I've tried to figure it out. I don't know why. Maybe because it's just something that is in the public conscience after, the movie American Sniper. I don't know what it is. But man, I've run across so many people and so many women that are like, hey, my sister's dating this guy. He was a sniper. So we're going to talk about how you can kind of call these guys out. All right, so Don Shipley, you heard me reference him. I've never met this gentleman face to face. I love his videos. He actually got banned from YouTube for outing people for lying about their military background. He runs a SEAL experience. It's called Extreme SEAL Experience. You can go there, extremesealexperience.com. Again, I've never met the guy personally. I love the work he's doing. And what's great about Don, aside from his hair, everybody has to comment. I mean, you look at that epic hair. He's older than me. But you see him on the phone there. When he catches people lying about their military, he picks up the phone immediately and calls them out, and he records the whole thing. It's absolutely hilarious. And this guy does not take any prisoners. He busts a lot of people. If you want to watch some of his videos, go to videos.extremesealexperience.com. You'll get an idea of what he deals with on a daily basis. I don't do this full time, certainly, but he deals with a lot of that. So how do you identify stolen valor? Again, it can be difficult if you're not a veteran. Most veterans can pick up on it pretty darn quickly. Things just don't add up. Time frames don't add up, especially in smaller units. The Marine Corps is the smallest of the service. At any given time, only about 185,000 Marines. Now, it sounds like a lot of people, but if you stay in for a while, you start running across the same people over and over in your job, whether you're a grunt, as you climb up the ranks. There are only so many sergeant majors in the Marine Corps. There are only so many snipers. And, if you look at in our social media pages that we have, some secret social media pages, everybody is connected to somebody that knows somebody. And so once in a while, you'll see, a brother that will say, hey, does anybody know this guy? And then they follow that up with an apology saying, hey, if you're on here, I apologize, just doing my due diligence, right? And I would say more often than not, you'll have somebody, raise their hand and say, yeah, I know him. I served with him over, whatever, 3-6, scout snipers, or yeah, I served with him first recon, or whatever the case is. Once in a while, you have somebody who goes, no, who the heck is this guy? Never heard of him. Or once in a while, I'll have somebody say, yeah, he went to sniper school. He failed out. He's not really being, honest about it. So that's kind of a big tell, but you can always ask questions, right? The number one thing that you kind of want to ask is, if you're really wondering, especially if you're thinking about going into business with somebody or getting married or whatever the case is, DD-214, that magical document. Here's one of mine. I had another one. I had split service because I got out, went to college, came back in as an officer. So here's one of mine. So DD-214, you can get them under the Freedom of Information Act. I actually published mine online because as I started calling out stolen valor people, I had people go, well, I think you're lying about your military experience. And I said, fine. So I put my DD-214. It's redacted for a couple of reasons. There's some monetary figures in there that's really nobody's business. But it will have your name. It will have the place you went into. It will have your rank when you got out. In this case, again, I got out on an injury. I was an O1E, which means I was, an ensign in the Navy, prior enlisted Marine. It'll tell the unit, Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado, California is where I got out from. It will show all of the MOSs you have if you have them. In this case, since it's my Navy one, it doesn't show. I was a 8654 and 0311 and 8541, which is a scout sniper, so on and so forth, time in service. And then it will have the awards that you were given, in this case Navy Achievement Medal, all that, combat action, and it will have the schools that you've attended. So DD-214, there's nothing top secret about this. There's nothing that you can't get through Freedom of Information Act. So I would say one of the biggest tells for somebody lying about their military experience is, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard this, somebody will approach them and say, well, where were you? And they're like, it's all classified. It's all classified. Well, can I see your DD-214? Can't do that. It's classified. All my missions were classified. So understand this. You may be in a unit that when you're serving in it, you're not allowed to tell people. It may be classified that you're in that, stuff like that. But you still are in the military and you will still have records of having been in the military. Now, you may not be able to talk about very specific missions you went on. Those may be classified. That's fine. But when people start giving these blanket statements, well, my records are, they're all classified. 100% bullshit right there. 100%. The other thing that we do, at least in the sniper community, is we ask, we're like, hey, what schoolhouse did you go to and what was your class? There used to only be, and if you saw one of my prior podcasts, the Marine Corps got rid of the Scout Sniper program. There were only 3 schoolhouses: East Coast in Stone Bay, West Coast in Camp Pendleton, and then Quantico, Virginia. They had another schoolhouse up in Hawaii. I don't know a lot about that one, but either way, it's a very small community. So you say, what schoolhouse did you go to? One of the biggest tells about anything, whether it's, Ranger school, special forces training, whatever the case is, buds, is when you ask them, what was your class number? They'll say, well, I don't remember. That was a long time ago. I went over 30 years ago, 393, chief instructor, staff sergeant Ronk, which interestingly enough, somebody in our sniper group, probably about 4 years ago, did one of those, said, hey, we've got a guy knocking at the hatch. He wants to get into this group. His last name is Ronk. Does anybody know him? Now, he predates me, and, I'm kind of one of the old timers in that group now. And I said, yeah, absolutely. He was the chief instructor when I went through sniper school. So again, it's a very small community, but one of the first things you can ask is, hey, what was your class number? If they claim to have gone through Ranger school, and I'm not a Ranger, I'm not Ranger qualified, they will absolutely know their Ranger class number. Make no mistake about it. what unit did you serve and where did you serve? If people are claiming combat, hey, where were you? When were you there? These folks, if you haven't served in the military, it's very hard to get the lingo. It's very hard to get places and dates correctly, things like that. It just doesn't work that way. So it does become very difficult to continue that lie. And so what they tend to default to, in my experience, is, well, it's all classified, or it was a long time ago, or I can't tell you that, or I have to kill you, or whatever the case is. If somebody is that trying to hide it that much, 99.9% of the time, they're lying about it. I got a call about 2 years ago, strangely enough, and this guy calls me up and he goes, "Hey, I breed gamecocks." And I was like, "Gamecocks?" I had to look it up. I didn't know this existed. So apparently, there's a big underground in the United States where people still fight chickens. They call them gamecocks. And so I started talking to this guy just because I was like, one, I wanted to see about the stolen valor thing, but more importantly, I kind of wanted to hear about this gamecock fighting because I'm an animal lover and I thought this was weird. And the guy's telling me, and I'm digressing a bit here, and he goes, I can breed a gamecock, whatever, some kind of, I don't know, red something, red rooster, I don't know what, a Kentucky red something. And he's like, I can fly that thing to the Philippines and sell it for $20,000. All right. Irrespective of gamecock fighting and all of that, which I don't agree with, but there was somebody in the gamecock community that was claiming to have been, of course, a Marine Corps sniper and, all of this stuff. And he was doing that to be able to buy gamecocks and sell them and stuff like that. And so I confronted the guy. And of course I said, what sniper school class were you? He was like, oh, I don't remember. It's been a long time ago. So where did you go? And he goes, Camp Lejeune. I said, okay, where was the schoolhouse based out of? He's like, well, Camp Lejeune. Well, okay, where? So the schoolhouse Camp Lejeune was actually at a little base at the time called Stone Bay. It's where MARSOC is now. The Marine Raiders are based out there. When I went there, the only thing out there was sniper school and the custodial unit for kids, Marines that got into trouble in the rifle range. That was it. But again, if he didn't know Stone Bay, he's going to get it wrong. So it's things don't add up. The other thing that you can notice, and most military members, even if they're from a different branch, can look at awards pretty quickly and say that doesn't make sense. So the reason that we have awards in the military, and this goes back again to Roman times, is so that the commanders can very quickly see the experience of the folks under their command. So the vast majority of decorations or awards or whatever you get in the military, not combat related, they're not related to valor or anything else. So if you spend 6 months on deployment on a ship in the Navy or the Marine Corps, you get a Sea Service deployment ribbon. And that tells somebody, if you have a ribbon, okay, Chris spent 6 months at sea. If I was a Marine, probably on a MEU, doing a MEU float. In the Navy, who knows? Could have been, the Navy spends their time at sea. So if you see somebody that has, a ribbon with, 4 stars on it, well, that tells you they did 5 deployments. If, you see an overseas service ribbon, that means that I spent over 12 months overseas, stationed somewhere without coming back, unless I go on leave or whatever. So it just kind of gives you an idea of their experience. An Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal means that you were part of an Armed Forces expedition. So when I was in Somalia, that wasn't a war zone. It was a low intensity conflict, but we were awarded an Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal for that. So when you start looking at people, you can kind of tell pretty quickly whether or not it adds up. Even if I'm not in the Army, I understand enough about if you have a combat infantryman's badge, a CIB, you had to have seen combat. So you understand enough about it. If somebody doesn't have a good conduct medal and they claim that they did, 8 years in the Marine Corps, you have to question why, because you get one for every 3 years of good service and good conduct. Could have been a reservist. Who knows what the case is? But somebody that has a passing knowledge of what, decorations and awards are normally can pick it up very quickly. And you'll see oftentimes, go to somebody's Facebook page and you'll look, and they'll of course have moto pics of them up there, and they'll have their rack on. You look at it and you go, "Nah, that's complete nonsense." Or oftentimes they'll have them out of order, or they'll have them positioned incorrectly. One of the most curious things I saw, so there's a medal that is given for courageous acts, I believe, or whatever. It's called the Navy Marine Corps Medal. So only sailors and Marines can get it, but it's for doing something extraordinary that's not in your military service. So a good example, you'll see this once in a while. Let's say a Marine reservist, Navy reservist person is driving down the street. They see a car accident. They run out, they save somebody's life. they may get a Navy Marine Corps medal for doing that. Now, that wasn't in their job, in the military, but they did something and they were, serving in the military. So it's called the Navy Marine Corps Medal. In my entire time in being in the military and being around people in the military, I only know two people that ever got that. And one of them I just found out. And I mean, it's the highest civilian award you can get in the Navy or the Marine Corps. But I swear to God, I've probably met 15 people that were stolen valor that claimed to have the Navy and Marine Corps medal. It's shocking to me that they would claim that. Now, some awards, those awards for valor, Medal of Honor, the crosses, Bronze Star, Silver Star, Navy Marine Corps Medal. You can actually, there's a database, you can look that up and see if they had those awards. The other awards, things for, being deployed, you can't look those up. But again, you can tell pretty quickly if somebody did that and where they were. And, but again, the biggest tell to me is they won't provide records. And everything is classified. Just out of the gate at that point, there's no point in even talking to them, because people that have actually done stuff, they may have to dance around, or they may, try to be humble and dance around a little bit. But if pressed, they're going to explain it to you, and they'll explain it in sufficient detail that you'll be satisfied with it. You can pick up on it, pretty quickly. And, I ran into an old timer at Walmart, and it was fascinating. Hey, you get old timers that lie about it as well. And the guy is wearing a chosen veteran hat. I mean, he's an old timer. He's probably 90 when I met him. And I see him, and Chosen Reservoir is one of the toughest battles in the history of the Marine Corps. And I said, if this guy's a veteran, I have to walk him. So I walk up and I say, sir, I just want to say thank you. And he turns around, looks at me, and sees the tattoos and everything, and he goes, how are you doing, brother? And as soon as he said brother, I said, this dude's a Marine. And here's this guy with tons and tons of combat I could not even imagine. Chosen Reservoir, 1953, I believe, in Korea, turns around and calls me brother. So not only am I just like, on cloud nine, but I take the opportunity to talk to him. And of course, I'm not asking him polite questions or anything, but even this guy, 90 something years old, had such an astute memory of his time in the Marine Corps. And we were talking about boot camp and training and this and that. And immediately you could tell he was on the up and up. And so, engaging these people in conversations, people that, steal valor, they're not going to have the detail of that. If you watch my podcast talking about being a sniper, I go into some detail about some of the training and things like that. And if you haven't been to sniper school, you're not going to know that level of detail. You're going to say it's classified. So stolen valor, again, it is protected under the First Amendment. I do agree with that, so long as somebody's not using it to rip somebody else off. I think it is deplorable. I think it's horrible to do. It is protected under the First Amendment, freedom of expression. But it's a commonality I've noticed. It's kind of interesting. If people are willing to lie about their military background or even having a military background, that seems to pervade their entire personality. They'll lie about anything. It really is just shocking to me that they'll say, hey, I served in the military. Then they turn around, they lie about something else. So I would say if you find somebody that's lied about their military background, they're probably lying about a lot. And that, I'm kind of pointing the proverbial finger at people, men and women that meet folks that, they have an interest in dating. Oftentimes, somebody wants to look better than they are. Hey, I'm 5'7" and some change. I have to throw the change in there. When I was dating, I may have fibbed about being 5'8" a few times, right? Human nature. We always want to make ourselves look better than we are. But there is a line you don't want to cross, right? And obviously, stolen valor is one of them. So hope you enjoyed this. Again, go to Don Shipley's site, Extreme SEAL Experience. Watch his videos. Absolutely hilarious. His wife works with him as well, but he outs people like nobody's business. And it is amusing to watch him do what he does. And he does it, I think about full time now. And he's been in some lawsuits. The other thing I will tell you about stolen valor is, boy, when you threaten to expose people for lying about their military, man, they come out of the gate swinging, threatening lawsuits, all kinds of stuff. The one gentleman I was telling you that was the sergeant major that got relieved of duty came out and wrote a really nasty public statement about me and said, well, who's going to believe a simple blogger? Well, I may be a blogger, but I also did my time in the military and, don't lie about it. So I hope you enjoyed this. Again, a sniper's perspective. This was a quick one, and you guys have a great day, and we'll catch up with you later.